When you're planning your safari, seasonality is something important for you to take consideration because, after all, you're going to be spending a lot of time in the outdoors. Now, the seasons in Africa work a little bit different than they do in North America. We have the 4 seasons, spring, summer, winter, fall, and the weather's different for each one of those. Now, the first thing to think about in Africa is that, first of all, it's a huge continent. And so what the seasons are in one spot can be completely different than what the seasons are in a different spot because of the vast differences. You can imagine the difference in seasons for between Florida and Washington. It's the same idea in Africa. But generally speaking, the wet season is the summer months where it tends to be hotter during the day, warmer at night. It doesn't get quite as cool at night. It can be in some locations a bit muggier, but in other places it can be still dry. Whereas the dry season tends to be through winter, where you have beautiful days that get up easily into the 80s and sometimes 90s, but at night it gets a little bit cooler, sometimes even down to just about freezing. This means that kind of the best times to be out on safari, first thing in the morning and last thing in the evening in those drier winter months, can be quite chilly. So you want to bring a jacket and longer clothes and layers because during the day it'll get quite warm. Whereas if you travel in the warmer summer season, you don't have to worry about those layers nearly as much. Now, the high season tends to be those drier months for a couple of reasons. One is that there's no rain, so people want to avoid the rain often. But the other thing too is that because there's no rain in that season, there tends to be less vegetation, less greenery, which means there's less places for animals to hide, so it's a little bit easier to spot animals. Also, because there's no rain, there tends to be less water around, so the animals tend to congregate around the water holes, so it's a little bit easier to find them that way as well. In saying that, I often travel in the wetter, greener season because, for one thing, there's great value for it. For another thing, the places aren't nearly as busy. The third thing is that even if it does rain, it tends to only rain for an hour or two in the afternoon, and that helps to bring the temperature down. And so it's a great way to be able to experience different destinations as well. And as there is to everything, there's always exceptions. And so different destinations still have exceptions to the rule. One rule in particular is the Okavango Delta, which is a very popular place in Botswana. In the wet season, in the rainy season, is actually when it's dry and there's much less water, whereas in their dry season is when they get all the flooding that comes there, which gives you plenty of water opportunities to get out on boats and see animals from the water. And this is because the flooding doesn't come from rain here in Botswana, it comes from the mountains in Angola and comes through a river and spreads out onto the plain. So it's kind of the opposite. Their wet, floody season is actually the dry weather season. So our clients usually come to us with one of two scenarios. The first scenario is that they have specific dates that they need to travel, say March break, because that's when the kids are off, or they get specific time off for the holiday season because that's when their work shuts down, that kind of a thing. And if that's the case, no problem. We can find a spot. There's always a spot in Africa, no matter what time of the year, where it's either the high season or the green season, depending on which one you want to go to. So we could talk about those different options. On the other hand, we also have some people that come to us that say, we can go anytime, we don't care when we want to go, but we want to make sure that we are in one particular season, or because they want to see one particular thing. Let's say they want to see the migration crossing in the Masai Mara. And if that's the case, then we can work around that as well. The great thing about the size of Africa and the different climates and weather is that there's always somewhere to go, there's always somewhere to choose. It's just a matter of talking to an expert in the destination to be able to choose the right one for what you're looking for. So, if you want to talk to one of those experts, go ahead, click the link below. You can talk to one of the safari experts at Athari Africa, and we'll be happy to help you out to plan your safari. So go ahead and click that link, and we look forward to working with you.